Good evening. You're tuning into AWANI Tonight with me, Cynthia Ng. The government's targeted subsidy program for poor and hardcore poor households, Sumbangan Asas Rahmah or Sara, will be implemented in phases from today. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim says this year's allocation has been increased to 700 million ringgit from 130 million ringgit last year.
Anwar said the higher allocation allowed the government to increase the number of Sara beneficiaries from 210,000 to 700,000. Cash assistance has also been increased to 1,200 ringgit, double of last year's amount. The Prime Minister added that Malaysia's economic transformation began by uplifting the people's status. The Sara program, he said, was a first step in addressing the wealth gap in Malaysia. The Finance Ministry had earlier announced that the funds would be credited to recipients in the peninsula from today, while those in Sabah, Sarawak and Labuan would receive cash assistance from February 19th.
There is an urgent need to review the country's preschool education system to prevent further disparities in the community. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim says preschools under the Education Ministry need to comprehensively provide additional facilities for all students in the country, even if it means extra costs for the government.
Kalau kita katakan 80% sahaja yang masuk prasekolah, dengan kategori berbeza, mungkin 40% baik, selainnya itu agak mediocre, pertengahan dan sekitar 20% sangat lemah. Maknanya tak sampai 50%. Maknanya kita dalam bicarakan soal keadilan, kita sebenarnya melebarkan kesenjangan di antara kota dan desa, kaya kota dan miskin kota, desa dan pedalaman.
The Public Accounts Committee will begin proceedings on the multi-lane free-flow MLFF project under the Works Ministry. Chairperson Datuk Mas Ermiati Samsudin says the committee unanimously agreed to start proceedings during the first week of the upcoming Parliament sitting.
Representatives from the Works Ministry and Malaysian Highway Authority will be called in for the proceedings. Mas Ermiati said the committee would also seek input from highway operators regarding the management of the MLFF project. The MLFF is a barrier-free toll collection system aimed to reduce traffic congestion on highways, especially at toll plazas. The system would collect payments using radio frequency identification devices, along with an automated number plate recognition system. The 3.46 billion ringgit project was approved in 2021 by the former government, but was reportedly objected by 32 highway toll concessionaries who claimed the government had awarded it directly to private company YTL Corporation Berhad.
Malaysia will push for the recognition of Palestine as a full member of the United Nations at the upcoming United Nations Security Council ministerial-level open debate on the situation in the Middle East. Foreign Minister Datuk Seri Mohamad Hassan will be participating in the debate tomorrow to show Malaysia's strong and unwavering support for Palestine.
Mohamad will also reiterate Malaysia's call for an immediate ceasefire, oppose the forced displacement of Palestinians, and stress the urgent need for unhindered humanitarian aid in Gaza. Malaysia will also be supporting international legal action against Israel on the Palestinian issue. Mohamad is set to head the Malaysia delegation at the International Court of Justice public hearing on Israel's policies in the occupied Palestinian territory in The Hague, Netherlands, starting from February 19th.
There have been calls for Malaysia to introduce a fixed-term Parliament Act to prevent political instability. Ilham Centre Research Fellow Mujibu Abdul Muiz shares whether this could be a positive step towards strengthening parliamentary democracy.
Generally, if we're talking about the effectiveness of this thing to reduce political stability in Malaysia, we need to look on the ideas of political instability by depending on various factors, especially when we are talking about predictability, political continuity, and of course, the prevention of snap elections. But in the broader political and institutional context, we need to look also on the constitutional framework, the institutional stability, and of course, our political culture, in which we need to look at the willingness of political actors, how much they abide to the rules and norms for the establishments for the fixed-term parliamentary act.
Mujibu outlined several factors that need to be considered when drafting a law on fixed-term parliaments.
Things that need to be considered is the fixed term itself, whether the legislation will specify a fixed term for each parliamentary term, in which in other country, the fixed term is always considered as 4 years or one term, which is in our country, it is depend on the discretion of the Prime Minister, whether they want to call an early election, snap election, so on and so forth. And number two, of course, we need to look at the role of Yang di-Pertuan Agong, because such legislation need to define the role of Yang di-Pertuan Agong in the dissolution process, because it might outline the circumstances under which the king could exercise the discretion, and such as when the Prime Minister advised dissolutions of the parliament, or maybe in certain stages where the events of no confidence motion will table to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister need to call for an early election to the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. Number three, I would like to see that the no confidence mechanism itself, whether the act will need to address the situation where a vote of no confidence is passed against the government, whether this could trigger the early election or allow the formation of new government without dissolving the parliament. Because when you call about a fixed term election, this question will arise, whether this is applied to the newly established law or not.
We'll go for a quick break. Stay tuned for more.
Filem lebih daripada sekadar cerita.
Let them come.
Ia menghubungkan kita.
We are going to stop that monster.
I'm working on this new case, a missing scientist.
Memberikan momen dihargai.
Do I look like a killer?
They're coming to get me.
Mengeratkan pertalian.
We're gonna have to fight.
Dan mendekatkan kita. Stream bila-bila masa di mana jua. WhatsApp Switch sekarang.
Despite its geographical remoteness, Antarctica's warming ice sheets cast a far-reaching influence. Malaysia is not excluded in this. We speak to Professor Dr. Azizan Abu Samah from the Sultan Mizan Antarctic Research Foundation about the impacts to the country.
You must realize that we are linked quite intricately between what happened in the polar region and what happened in the tropics. The signal can be seen, especially signal like El Nino and La Nina. Both of them have impact on the Arctic and also on the Antarctic. And there's many research that link El Nino and La Nina impacting on the Arctic and Antarctic. And there is some study of what you call rapid warming of the Antarctic due to a stream of warm, humid air coming over from the tropics and landing up in the Antarctic.
He said ongoing research is being conducted to link the impacts of warming of the Arctic and Antarctic regions to the southwest and northwest monsoon in Malaysia. Meanwhile, Dr. Azizan urged Malaysia to promote its presence as a significant player in the Antarctic research by setting up a base there.
It is a cabinet decision in 1996 that Malaysia should embark in Antarctic research related to climate change and related to biodiversity. That is a cabinet decision, okay? And the cabinet decision also say that Malaysia should work to be a consultative party to the Antarctic Treaty system. We are now an observer to the Antarctic Treaty system. As an observer, we cannot vote. We can only give information, that's about it. So if you want to be a voting member of the Antarctic Treaty system, we have to show to the Antarctic community that we have significant and sustainable science in the Antarctic.
A landslide in China's Yunnan province has killed 8 people, while another 47 remain missing. State broadcaster CCTV says around 18 households were buried and more than 200 people have been evacuated from the area.
The landslide in Jiaotong City happened around 6 in the morning on Monday. Authorities launched an emergency operation involving more than 200 rescue workers and dozens of fire engines, all working in snowy sub-zero weather. Chinese President Xi Jinping called for all-out rescue efforts to reduce the number of casualties. It was not clear what caused the landslide. Landslides are common in Yunnan, an often impoverished region of China with steep mountain ranges. In January 2013, at least 18 people were killed in a landslide in the same county of Zhenxiang.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has dropped out of the U.S. presidential race and endorsed Donald Trump as the Republican nominee for the White House. Now, this leaves former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley as Trump's final challenger just 2 days before the pivotal New Hampshire primary.
DeSantis' decision came less than a week after he lost to Trump in the Iowa caucuses, despite a huge investment there. Trump is the clear frontrunner after winning the first contest in Iowa with 51% of the vote. DeSantis was widely seen as Republicans' most promising alternative to Trump ahead of the general election in November. But on Sunday evening, he said he had no clear path to victory. DeSantis supporters appear more likely to switch their allegiance to Trump than to the more moderate Haley. In New Hampshire, about 2/3 of DeSantis supporters list Trump as their second choice. Haley finished a disappointing third in the Iowa caucuses.
Thousands of homes were left without power after Storm Isha battered the UK overnight, bringing with it strong winds and heavy rain. Winds up to 159 kilometers per hour were recorded in Northumberland, which borders Scotland, and travel disruption is expected to continue throughout Monday. UK Power Network said it had restored power to most properties in eastern and southeastern England, but around 45,000 homes in Northern Ireland remain without electricity. The Met Office warned of damage to homes and buildings and further power cuts, adding that gusts could reach up to 128 kilometers per hour in coastal areas. Hundreds of flights were cancelled across the UK, while all rush-hour rail services in Scotland were suspended due to damage to overhead power lines. Storm Isha is the 9th named storm to hit the UK since the start of the season in September. It follows Storm Hank, which hit the country earlier this month, causing flooding and travel disruption. That wraps up AWANI Tonight. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching and good night.